Today we're covering 7th grade chapter 4, lesson 4, circumference. And there's quite a few vocabulary words we need for this. First of all, center. The center is the point in the very middle. Ah, surprise. This little line is pointing at the center. Diameter. Diameter is the distance across the middle of the circle. It has to go through that center. So diameter is the big word. It goes all the way across the circle. And then there's radius. Radius is the little word. And it is the distance from the edge to the center. This little line right here is pointing at the radius because it covers half the circle. Halfway. So if you know the diameter, you could just divide it in two to find the radius. Or if they tell you the radius, you can multiply it by 2 to find the diameter. Diameter is all the way across the tire, from the very edge to the other edge, and it has to go through the center. My tire is 32 inches. The radius goes from the center to the edge, which would be half. And half of 32 is 16. The circumference is the distance around the circle. Kind of like perimeter, but since it's a circle, it's special. It gets a special word, circumference. And that would be all the way around this circle. Circumference is the distance around the circle, so that would be the distance around my tire. And have a flexible tape measure, so I can kind of curve it around, but it's kind of hard to measure around something. So we might need a different way to measure besides with a tape measure or a ruler. We can't always measure around a circle, like the circumference of the earth. We couldn't measure that with a tape measure. So we need a formula. And our formula for circumference is pi times the diameter. Of course, if you don't know the diameter, you can also multiply pi times 2 times the radius. Because remember, it takes 2 radius to make a diameter. And pi is the ratio of the circumference to the diameter. Pi is the ratio of the circumference to the diameter. So if you knew the circumference, you could divide it by diameter, and you will always get this crazy number that goes on and on and on. It does not end. It does not have a pattern. That's why we round it to 3.14, typically.
You can also round it to just 3. And sometimes they use the fraction 22 over 7. So if you know the diameter, you multiply the diameter times one of these numbers. If you know the radius, you multiply it times 2, then multiply it times either 3 or 3.14 or 22 over 7. Let's look at some extra examples, and then we'll talk about what you're going to do independently today. If you know the diameter and they want you to figure out the radius, you would divide by 2. So this would be 4 divided by 2, which is, yes, 2. So the radius is 2. The next one, again, they gave you 40, and you need to divide by 2. So 40 divided by 2 makes 20. On the next one, they give you the radius, and if they know the radius, you need to multiply by 2 to find the diameter. So 13 times 2 would make 26. The next one, you know the radius, so you're multiplying by 2. 10 times 2 makes 20. Number 5, determine the circumference. So did they give you the radius or the diameter? 3 is the diameter. So we need to use the formula circumference equals pi times diameter. We always start with a formula. If there's a formula for the problem, we start with the formula. And then we plug in the numbers. So the number we use for pi is 3.14. And the number we're going to use for diameter is 3. I got 942, and the decimal needs to go 2 spaces over, so that means it's between the 9 and the 4. So let's look at some of the examples you're going to do today. For 1, 2, and 3, you're just going to tell me, if they give you the diameter, you're going to tell the radius. If they give you the radius, you're telling the diameter. So for number 1, you're going to divide by 2. For number 2, you're going to multiply by 2. Number 4, you're just finding the circumference. And they gave you the diameter, so we need to use the formula pi times diameter. For number 5, they gave you the radius. Radius equals 21. So we need to use the formula circumference equals pi times 2 times radius. And they said to use 22 over 7. You don't have to use that. You can use 3.14 times 2 times 21. Or you can use the 22 over 7 times 2 times 21. And the reason that they suggest you use that is because you can simplify the 7 and the 21